Please like our video and subscribe to RotoWire. Then go to rotowire.com/pod for a free 10-day trial.
Welcome to the RotoWire Prospect Podcast. I'm Clay Link here with RotoWire.com's lead prospect writer, James Anderson, along with special guest Ian Kahn from The Athletic. Ian, thanks so much for taking the time, and congrats to you guys on the launch of your draft kit today over at The Athletic. And
thank you.
Not one, but two sets of Dynasty rankings, which will be our topic of discussion here today.
Yes. Thank you very much. I feel like I'm not such a special guest anymore. I think I'm just like regular guest because I get to.
We don't have many guests on this podcast.
Yeah,
right, I know.
You're pretty much the only guest we have on.
I know. So that's why I just feel like my gratitude to you guys always, as you know. There you go.
I appreciate it, and
like I never left.
You're the man. Of course, we appreciate all your contributions here at RotoWire for the past several years, and obviously wish you the best. And usually when I see a new set of Dynasty rankings, and you acknowledge this in your article, I skip through the text. Same with like love hate. If the talented Mr. Roto writes it, I just skip the text and just get to the rankings. But you have in bold, stop, read this text. What do you want people to know first and foremost about your Dynasty ranks?
First and foremost, I'm going to answer that in a second. First, I got to speak to one thing. So, last year around this time, it was about 2 months later, I had a very clear memory of James doing the rebuild rankings. And I sort of thought that my rankings were still, it was right when the pandemic hit. And James was like, dude, we need to do content. And I did not realize at the time when I started doing this, I thought I was coming up with this brand new exciting idea that no one had thought of, which was, hey, and it was something that very nice person, what's her name? Was it Susan?
Jenny Butler.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jenny Butler. My apologies, Jenny. 5-letter name. That's why I got confused. I do that. It happens to me all the time. And Jenny Butler wrote to both James and I think, sort of saying, hey, when are you guys going to do one for rebuilding teams and for teams that are playing for now? At the same time that was happening, Ariel Cohen reached out to me and said, why aren't you doing, I'm not going to do my Ariel Cohen impression. I'll save that for my show. I did that yesterday. It was a big hit. It is pretty funny. So if we have time at the end, maybe I'll do it again. He does not mind. He enjoys it tremendously. But he said, when are you going to do both? You should do both of them. I mean, if you're going to do, and I said, Ariel, I don't have frickin' time, dude. Come on, man. It's hard enough to do a top blah, blah, blah. So then when I was moving over from you guys to The Athletic, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I got a little lead time, and I'm going to surprise everybody. And I'm going to look like such a genius because nobody's ever done this. So I did my podcast yesterday, and Nando's like, dude, it's so great. Unbelievable. What a great idea. And I'm like, yeah, thanks. Yeah, I thought of it. Yeah, really, aren't I smart? And then I'm talking to James because we're doing our NFBC. We're doing an NFBC team together right now, 400 draft, which is going remarkably fun and well. And he's like, dude, remember I did it last April? I was like, no, you didn't do it. You just did the rebuild. He's like, no, dude, I did them both. And I was like, are you kidding me? So I'm like, I run to the phone. I'm like, Nando, there's a line in the article you got to take out. And so anyway, what I have to say is like, and if it was at like a different site, it would make more sense and it would be a little less annoying. But like, you're my partner and I didn't catch it because there's a pandemic going on. So I'm taking my mea culpa here. I'm going to take it again next week on Under the Radar and say, it's a great idea I have. Brilliant. It's actually, I think, the way Dynasty rankings could and should be done. Great idea, James Anderson.
Well, I think the key point is like Jenny hit us both up on Twitter. Like it wasn't even my idea; it was her idea, and she sent it to both of us. Like it's not it's not. I don't have like a copyright on this idea, and I didn't even come up with it. So
I appreciate that. But when I was talking about it yesterday, I had talked about Ariel because that was the name. That was the moment that I used to sort of do the work. And frankly, it's a tremendous amount of work. And because it's really scary because every player needs to be accounted for on both lists, right? And I'm sure there's a mistake. Like I'm sure there's somebody who's going to say, how do you have this guy? And I'm waiting for it. Hasn't happened yet. They dropped last night at midnight. Okay, now to answer your question, Clay, that I said that, and I need to say that because I wanted to say that. Thank you for letting me say that. So there's two lists. There's the rebuild list and there's the playing for now list. The rebuild list is really a startup draft list. That's the idea behind it. also the players that I think people should be looking towards while they're doing their rebuild, once they make the decision to go towards the rebuild. The play for now list is your basic list that I was doing at RotoWire for the last number of years. And so here's the key thing why I say stop, read this. On the list, Bobby Witt Jr. on the rebuild list is at number 40. Jacob deGrom is at number 39. If you're trading based on the rebuild list, you could trade Jacob deGrom for Bobby Witt Jr. And if you do that, the worst thing you ever did was read that list, because that's not the right pricing on that. On the what I want people to do is look at the rebuild list and then look to the regular list for the pricing. So on the regular list for pricing, we've got Jacob deGrom. I've got Jacob deGrom at 21 and Bobby Witt Jr. at 75. So you're going to need to bring a player who's 75. You're going to need a guy who's in the 50s on that list, maybe a guy around 108 on that list. And you combine all those pieces together to come up with the 21st ranked player in baseball. So it's there. It can be dangerous. That's why I really wanted to make that point. Did I describe that well, Clay?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. And it's easy to see why you are a professional actor, and your impressions are top notch. We appreciate those. And no, it's totally right, because, yeah, if you just scroll through the text and you don't really understand the context, you could shoot yourself in the foot a little bit.
You really could. Like, you could get yourself into a world of hurt. Mm-hmm. And that's something, that's why I put that you have to read this. Don't, and now once people understand when the next rankings come out, I'm probably going to still have to do that. I'll probably always do that and really make a point of it. But I do think there's upside to the idea, and I had a good time doing it. It was very challenging, but fun.
Nice. There's a question I want to ask both you and James, but James, go ahead first before I do that.
No, you go.
Okay. I was just going to ask you both, like, who's the most difficult type of player to rank with these? Obviously, it varies depending on which set of ranks, either for rebuilders or contenders. But is there a certain subset of player, Ian, that you found was particularly tough to rank or value?
They're all challenging in their own way, really. I mean, there's the Teoscar Hernandez guy who is in his just tipping over to age 28, 29, going into his age 29 season, right? Do you consider him like a really getting older outfielder, or is he a guy on the rebuild list that you could hold because he's going to give you 3 years, 4 years? But they're all challenging because they're all so darn specific in their own way. And it's part of why, look, I mean, as soon as I let you guys know I was moving to Athletic, the first thing I said was, the day my rankings come out, I'm coming back on the podcast. I hope we continue doing it so James and I can talk through this stuff. So James, what's your play on this?
Well,
what did you find?
I think the nice thing about doing the two sets of rankings is it makes a lot of these guys easier to rank because you have a very clear goal in mind, and you're either trying to win the league or you're trying to put the most talent you can together for the long haul. The tough part is when you're doing a set of rankings that are kind of just broad and supposed to be interpreted by everyone that plays in dynasty leagues, because like a guy like Max Scherzer, only a 30-year league tops can really use Max Scherzer for anything other than a trade chip. Like the other people, like, there's no reason to go get him. I mean, if you have him, you're just trying to trade him, and you're trying to find the right time to trade him. So those are the players that I think are the toughest to rank if you're not specifying rebuilding or contending, because they just have such kind of a narrow amount of value on certain teams, but a ton of value on other teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's part of what made it fun to do. I mean, I rank Scherzer really low. I really do. I think I'm lower on Scherzer in Dynasty than most people. He's really just at the tail end, and the only place that he belongs is on a team that's competing, period, because he's on borrowed time. I mean, I think he probably has he could have another 2 years of really good value, but he also could have another month. He could be done. I mean, we don't know. But, when I see him in NFBCs being drafted at 25, it makes me a little nervous as a Scherzer owner. But
I want to follow up really quick. So, like, let's just say you have Max Scherzer or Yu Darvish, and you kind of see the writings on the wall. You're not going to really be able to compete this year. You probably need to suck it up and enter a bit of a rebuild. do you think the time to trade those guys is like now, minimize the risk, like they don't get hurt during spring training? Or do you roll the dice and wait until a team is ready to make that all-in move mid-season and really cash out?
The problem with that is, especially for Darvish, if you wait, he's at the top of his value right now. In some ways, his top dynasty value. He's never been as good as he was this past year and the end of the year before. My concern about Darvish is any little hinky moment for a pitcher and all the value goes away, which is why I think both of us have bats so dramatically higher than everyone else. So I say trade him now. That's my vibe. I like to trade guys in season who are thriving in season, right? I like to trade guys in the offseason who have done well. If I think the arrow's going down on Scherzer, could come up this year. It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't shock me if he comes through but he's 37, He's 37 and he threw that. I still think that World Series run that he had took some starch out. I mean, if we look at what happened with Bumgarner, you look at I think that his velocity was down last year. He wasn't hitting. He eventually got up to 97, 98, but he wasn't living there like he had been in the past. Awesome guy, love him. One of the best pitchers, certainly of our generation. But nah, he's just, if you can get value for Scherzer, I just don't think you can. I mean, do you? Do you guys think you can get value for Scherzer in a dynasty?
The reason I asked that about Scherzer is because, like, even the contending teams, I feel, aren't that interested in like giving you their, whatever, their second best prospect or whatever for Scherzer right now. But they might be willing to be like, okay, fine, I'll suck it up and I'll do it because I need another horse to catch up to these other two guys that are a few points ahead of me in the standings, like mid-season. Yeah. Like that might be your only opportunity to actually get a haul for Scherzer. Whereas if you trade him right now,
you're not getting a haul. No. So I would argue Darvish now, because his value couldn't be any higher. He's still 33, 34 years old. He doesn't have that much time left, but he's being drafted as the number 4 pitcher in redraft leagues, number 5 pitcher. You can get a lot of value for Darvish right now. You really can. Not a ton, but you can get a good amount. And but Scherzer, if you want to tell me that you want to, if you told me you're going to hold Scherzer to show that he is Scherzer to trade him, that makes a lot of sense too. Darvish, less so for me.
Yeah, I mean, the Scherzer trend goes back to 2019, and of course the age is getting up, ton of mileage. I actually was just offered Scherzer in the Dynasty League, Sirius XM Dynasty League, and I want to apologize to Lenny Melnick, the legend, because I just didn't get back to him.
What did he offer you? And then maybe you didn't have anything
that's the
to
thing.
apologize
We were
for.
so far apart that I just figured it's not going to happen.
Well, what did he offer you?
He offered me Scherzer for Austin Riley, Jose Urquidy, Brad Hand, Rafael Montero, and Aaron Savali.
No.
So I just couldn't.
I mean,
Clay, how many times have you won that league?
all 3 times it's been in existence every year.
Really?
So
Atta, man.
I'm glad you're not in it, James. I'm glad you're not in it. But I got another question that I'd like to get both of your opinions on. Mistakes novice dynasty players make. Any common ones? We'll start with you, Ian, that you see regularly with new dynasty players.
Well, I mean, many, a lot. It's like poker, right? You want to get in the hand with the guy who doesn't quite know what they're doing, and there's so many different things. I'll just go with this: the Pringles. I like to call it the Pringles move. This is a really bad thing to do, and even expert dynasty players fall into this trap. You decide you're going to rebuild. Let's say you take over a new team. You're going to rebuild. And what you start doing is you make a trade. You make your first trade. And then everyone goes, ooh, fresh meat. I'm going to make an offer. I'm going to make a trade. I'm going to make a trade. I want to make a trade with this guy. Sometimes it makes sense to make your first trade be not so big and lose it by a little bit, which kind of signals to everybody, hey, you should try to come after me, because then you get into the pot with them. And then you see like what happens. Problem is then you make a good trade. And everyone's like, wow, what a trade. Great trade. Dude, that was awesome. Oh, my God, what great value. So then what you want to do is you want to make the next trade. And the next trade, and you will force trades when you get into I call it the Pringles syndrome, gentlemen. Don't fall into the Pringles syndrome. You got to make your trades, stop, breathe, see where things land. Don't just decimate your team. I mean, we've seen The league that we're in, James, we were talking about a player who did this last year, who just didn't stop and just never caught and gave away so much value. And you just have to be careful about that. So I'd say
the Pringles reference is into like, once you pop, you can't stop, right?
That's right. Once you pop your first trade, you can't stop. And you got to stop.
Just wanted to clarify.
Put away. I'm sorry. Yeah, I guess there are people who might not know that commercial. Once you pop, you can't stop. Once you pop, you can't stop. James?
I mean, I think it's maybe not a like beginning of a dynasty league type of mistake, but I just think the worst place you can be is in the middle, but trying to make win now moves when it's just unrealistic. Like when you're just basically finishing, let's say it's like a 20 team league, and every year you're finishing in that like 14 to 8 range, but it's not like you have this loaded farm system that's on the way, and it's not like you're a trade or two away from being a big time contender, yet you just continue to make these moves where you're just trying to get better at the big league level. Like you need to just be extremely realistic with yourself about where your team's at, because otherwise you're not going to be picking high enough in that first year player draft the next year to get those elite guys, but you're also just kind of spinning your wheels trying to compete in the short term. So I mean, that's not even a novice, like that's not like even a beginner thing. Like I see this with people that have been in leagues for like 4, 5, 6 years, and it's just like they can't. They're too impatient to go through that multi-year rebuild that they kind of need to go through.
I got you. Can I throw in a thought about that too, Clay?
Yeah, of course.
Let me add to that. There's even something worse, and this is the worst. It's the guy who decides in June that he's tired of rebuilding and decides that they want to make their team better. That's the most dangerous. That's the worst thing you can do. Like, I'm gonna rebuild. It's like, you know what? I'm so sick of seeing my name at the bottom of the standings. I just want to get some good players. I just want to have some fun. Doing that is there's one player in a league I played with many years ago who did that all the time, every year. And then it was like clockwork. So I'll trade you. I'll give you the prospects in the off season, and give me your players. And now we're coming to May 15th. Which is always that end of April, beginning of May is when people start to change their ideas of where they want to go. And he's like, I want to go for the money. It's like, never go for the money. Don't go for the money. Just don't go for the money. Go for the win.
Say, James, you were just at me next time. You're subtweeting me. No, I'm kidding. But in RDI, RIP to RDI, but I was kind of, that was my big mistake, was from day one, draft day, just toeing the line. Not really committing one way or the other, and that was the case throughout the years of that league, where it's like, always in that 6 to 14 range as you described, James. So that is a lesson I had to learn.
There's a league, Devil's Rejects, that James and I are in. We're not partners, which is not as much fun. But in this league, I was speaking to one of the owners trying to make a trade this weekend, and he was like, your team doesn't make any sense to me. I was like, really? And he said, I don't think you're playing Dynasty baseball right. I said, okay. And he said, because you keep taking major league guys in this draft. And it's a different setup. I think a 45-man roster. We keep 28. And we're playing for now. And right now, we have 4 or 5 good prospects that we really like, but I'm just accumulating as much talent as I can in this year because we're trying to win. Wilson Karaman and I are trying to win this year and next year. Our team is pretty good, and it's going to move forward really, really well. But it's like you don't have to. He said you gotta, if you're, there's no need to go all in. You should always keep 25%. Not necessarily. Yeah. Like if you're going for it, and if you're not buying, I don't advocate buying the Michael Brantleys of the world and the Max Scherzers of the world, because then you're getting old. But if you're buying young, strong talent, that's just the way to go. Anyway, that's just
I just had 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and it just
can't do
frustrating, and you absolutely can't.
People don't understand. There's nothing more fun than rebuilding in a dynasty league. It's the best because you're picking up players off the wire and then flipping them, and then just continue. It doesn't matter what positions. Just fill your team with value. Just get as much value as you can until the time comes that you have enough value that you can go back into the game.
Yeah, and if you're just starting a dynasty league at launch, like have a plan. I know, James, you kind of like to play for year 2. One of the teams in RDI, I forget the owners exactly, Tom something. Greg and Tom. Yeah, they were playing for many years down the road, so they were just kind of like punting on day one. But I didn't have a clear plan and was kind of playing both sides, and it didn't work out for me.
Never. I'm with James. I never play for the first year. That's one of the reasons why we did well together. But I never play for year one in a startup dynasty league ever. I'm always. I want to invest in 20. Let's say I'm doing a startup this week. I'm going to invest in 2021. I'm not doing anything in 2021. Then in 2022, I'm moving towards the money. And then 2023, we've got the championship in 2023, 2024, 2025, 2026. There might be an injury, so we might come in second. 2027, we'll get the championship back. That's what you want.
Yeah.
That's how you want to build. You got to take a little bit of, it's like you want to be a doctor, go to medical school for 4 years, pay the price, and you get to be a rich person who drives a, Tesla for the rest of your life. It's sort of similar to that.
I want to get your thoughts, guys, on just kind of a general strategy thing with Dynasty Leagues. Another one. You see a guy post on their trade block, you see some players you like, you're interested. What's the process for you with engaging them? James, let's start with you this time.
I think this is kind of where Ian's expertise is ahead of mine. Like, I'm not as active unless if I see someone who I maybe have gotten the better of in a trade in the past or something like that, and they're updating their block. Of course, I'm going to be interested, and sometimes I'll just send an offer unsolicited. Sometimes I'll send an email or a direct message or something like that, and just sort of say like, hey, like, kind of like these guys. I might even lie about the exact players I'm interested in, and just depending on who the other manager is, but you basically just kind of want to get a conversation rolling. If it's a manager who I've just never really had success coming to terms with on a trade in the past, or I just like, there's managers I play against where like I just don't think they ever are going to accept an offer unless they think they're clearly winning the offer, and so I just don't even interact with those people when it comes to trades. But it really depends on who's posting the update to their trade block, and then I'll approach it kind of in different ways.
Interesting. You, Ian, any approach that you generally take when you're first reaching out with somebody about a trade?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a slightly different question, but here's what I'll tell you: every player every player in the league is treated differently by me in terms of how I approach them in trades, because different guys want different stuff. One thing I'll tell you is I never or hardly ever post on the trade block unless I'm in talks about that player and about to move them. And here's why. Once you post on the block a guy that you want to move, you're automatically dropping 10% of their value off the top because you're already talking about moving them. If I've got a guy that I think, like Michael Pineda is a guy. Turns out James Anderson likes Michael Pineda quite a bit. Okay. I own Michael Pineda in the Devil's Rejects. I'm not going to put Pineda on the block. I'm going to reach out to James Anderson and I'm going to say, hey, look, you've got this. I've got Pineda. Can we find a way to make this work? Because otherwise you're giving away power in the conversation. I've said this before. I like being on the phone both ways. And it's not just, I mean, some people like never get on the phone with Ian Kahn. That's not right. Get on the phone with me. And here's why. Because I'm going to get information from you and you're going to get information from me and we're going to close a deal. And what people always say is, damn, man. And what, everyone says, well, you're always winning trades. No, I'm not always winning trades. And certainly not when we're on the telephone. What happens is we find a way that it works best for both teams. I don't think I said this on your show, but the difference between, I'm playing with all these poker players now in this league. Brett, Sarah, and I share a league. And I'm talking to these poker players. I'm like, look, it's not like poker where one of us is going to win the pot and the other one goes away empty-handed. Like the goal here is that both of us make our teams better. And the two lists at The Athletic or the draft kit dropped today, and subscribe. Please subscribe. The lists are there to help you find how those match up best. And that's what it's about. And what people say is like, wow, I was really expecting, you really do make fair offers. And that's the trick. If you make an offer that is unfair to someone else, you're poisoning the well. Like, I like to make an offer. I always do this. My first offer to somebody is an offer that they might take. I don't play the negotiation game. I don't like playing the squeeze game with people at all. I rather give you a little bit more of an edge to get what it is that I want and what it is that you want. People are like, wow, yeah, actually that's pretty good. Wow, I'm surprised. I accept. That's what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. And I know how to value it and figure it out. There are tricks. There are little tricks to help nudge. Go ahead, James.
I think with what you were just saying about like making fair offers, I think it's important to take the time, take 10, 15 minutes before you make the offer to make sure that it makes sense. Because like the times when I've sent like a BS offer, it's because I just did it in like 2 minutes and just was kind of in a rush and was just like, oh, I like that player. Like, here's an offer. And then I'll come back and be like, oh, actually, that was a crappy offer. I shouldn't have sent that. I should have taken more time to kind of look at what this guy might be interested in. Or, I think you have to take the time to make a good, fair, smart offer.
For sure.
And when you send out a crappy offer, you're cutting off communication long term too. That's just what I wanted to add.
Yeah, I mean it's recoverable for sure.
Yeah.
It's recoverable, but you got to look. I look at it from the other guy's point of view. What does this look like to him when he sees it, or her? What does it look like to them when they see this offer? Does this make their team better? Does this fill holes for them? Does this feel like good value to them? Also, look, I look at passion too. If someone's on a radio show talking about how much they love a player, and I don't agree with that evaluation, I own the player. That player is going to be I'm going to be on the phone with that person within a day, saying, "Look, I know you like the guy. I like him too. But you got this guy. Do you like this guy? Because I really like this guy's on your team. I'll give you this guy for this guy, and maybe we'll do a draft pick swap." I think just communication, actually, honesty and openness is a good thing. And trying to find a deal that works best for both players. So Tim McLeod, who is the nicest man in fantasy baseball, except for maybe Clay Link, but I still got Tim McLeod. Tim McLeod's got years on you, brother. Tim McLeod taught me that when I first started playing the game, and I stick by that.
Nice. And yeah, I say pick up the phone when Ian calls. I mean, it's hard to tell him no. But if you just got to learn to tell Ian no.
No. Sometimes I've been in trades with people
because you're such a nice guy.
Well, not always. Not always.
I hear you, but I just know that anybody who says, "Oh, I'm going to get ripped off by Ian," I mean, that's not the case at all. I mean, if you're
there have been times where I've been in on trades where someone's willing to give me more than I should get, and I've stopped them. I said, "Come on now, I got to at least let me." I'm going to add a pick. Well, it's also. If you win a trade any more than 60-40 on the face, you're not doing anybody any good.
Yeah.
And the value, people are like, oh, it's the trades. That's why you win by trade. No, you win by pickups on Sundays. You win by finding the guys who are going to grow and then flipping those for other players. It's picking up the Jared Walsh for $1. It's picking up the Zach Gallen for $1 before he becomes Zach Gallen that then you can have on your team forever. I mean, that's the thing that differentiates, I think. I mean, yes, there's value. There are going to be trades that happen, but you're going to make mistakes too. I've made some mistakes, man. I made some trades that deeply, it's more easy to remember the ones that you screwed up, to be honest.
That's true.
100%. Like, yeah. We've all met, you and I have probably made triple digit trades just in the past, 5 years, if we factor in all the leagues we're in.
Yeah.
And I always remember the ones I screwed up, and I can barely remember the ones that I
remember once when we traded for Felipe Vasquez, right? Didn't we trade for him right at the end of the season? Gave up a bunch because we were in the, and then and now he's out of baseball. So is that this one? Am I saying the right guy? The Pittsburgh Pirates reliever?
Yeah.
Yep. I remember in the Staff Keeper League too. This is the only trade that really sticks out in my mind from that league, but. Trading you, James Carlos Correa, a couple years before he debuted for Arismendi Alcantara. Maybe a pick. Not great. So, the bad ones always do stand out. But, Ian, I wanted to follow up with you. I know you're not, predatory when it comes to trades at all. You do like to talk on the phone.
Yes, very much.
But is there a way you maybe you like somebody or maybe you've seen them make some questionable trades and you do want to make some moves with them, but you don't want to put them on high alert? Is there a way you capitalize without maybe tipping your hand a little bit?
I just call them. I just call them.
Yeah,
I just call them and I say, hey, good trade. I see you're making some moves. Is there a guy here? I try to, everyone does that, right? You see a guy make a trade and you go, whoa. And you want to find out, like, what were you thinking to make that trade? Well, okay, can we think that way for my team too? Let's find a way to make that happen. But it's an art. Actually, trading is an art. It's a skill, but it's an art. And you gotta feel where the other person's at. The one thing that I've learned through the years, if they don't want to do it, you don't push. Yeah. All good, man. No pressure. Like, you're not held. And I never hold anybody to anything. Like, if you say, well, I'm kind of thinking that, and yeah, Ian, think about that. And I go and I think about it, and then I come back to them and like, Ian, I mean, I said that I would do it, but I'm kind of having second thoughts about it. I say, dude, you're good. It's not official till it's official, because I don't want anybody feeling bad. No one should press accept on a trade they're not excited about. I don't want anybody doing that ever. It's no fun. And part of the game is fun. And you guys are my friends. These people are my friends. I don't want them to not have a good time. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. James?
Ian, you mentioned that team that you and Brett co-manage.
Yeah.
And I know that you and a bunch of the guys from DR were talking about just sort of strategy and sort of deciding, like, how do you know when it's time?
Yeah.
If you're playing for year 2, if you're playing for year 3, like, how do you know when it's time to start moving those prospects? Because you don't want to be too impatient.
No, you can't be.
Trade your prospects before they've fully, gotten to their high point in value. So how do you really know when it is time to kind of push that button?
Well, this team is bizarre, and it's a slightly different story than most teams in most leagues, because it's $1,000 a year buy-in, and Brett and I are splitting it, right? And I was like, I don't really know if I want to do that. It's going to change the way I think about the game. But what we did, and we both went in with the same, and we said, well, let's team up. Like, we'll team up. I was like, I'm teammates with James. I can be teammate with Robert Mershak, with Wilson Karaman. It's a good thing to do in Dynasty leagues. I do like teaming up. So we had the first pick in the draft. I'm going to go through this really quickly because it's worth it and it's shocking. We took Acuna 1 because we had the first pick. Then we took Eloy at 30, 29, 30, whatever it is. And then Keston here at 31. And the way it's set up is like a score sheet league where you only keep your major league players, and then you can. So we had the first 4 picks in the draft. So we had coming to us, and we drafted Torkelson, Austin Martin. Someone had dropped Mike Soroka, and actually we dropped Keston Hiura. So we only kept 2 players. We only kept Eloy. We knew we were going to get Hiura back, or we expected that we would. But the whole thing was to get Torkelson, and then Martin. But on this team we have, I'm just going to read it really quick. It's all players, and once they lose their rookie eligibility, they become in this other thing. So I'm just going to read down from the top. Mountcastle, Hiura, Madrigal, Acuna, Dylan Carlson, Eloy, Kirilloff, Brendan Rodgers, Francisco Alvarez, Adley Rutschman, Austin Wells, Andrew Vaughn, Nolan Gorman, Austin Martin, Spencer Torkelson, C.J. Abrams, Nick Gonzalez, Marco Luciano, Bobby Witt Jr., Jazz Chisholm, Joe Adell, Corbin Carroll, Jason Dominguez, Jared Kelenic, Trevor Larnach, Helio Ramos, Julio Rodriguez, Alec Thomas, Taylor Trammell, and Zach Veen. And it's a 15-team Dynasty league.
That's not towing the line. It's a clear plan in place, it seems.
Without question. And nobody else was playing the plan. So it left everybody open to us. We have 18 in the top 20. The one guy we don't have, Royce Lewis, rest in peace. So sorry. But tough
that's
injury.
Horrible. I saw that this morning.
Not rest in peace. That's not what I mean. Obviously, I don't mean that. So I was talking with the Devil's Rejects guys. We were doing the night of the draft. Tom Trudeau put this thing together. It was really fun. And some of the best minds in Dynasty all coming together. And Brett and I sort of said, this is where we're at. We have a team here, and we could sell off 4 or 5 top 20 hitting prospects and make a team to compete this year, which would then put us in the money because it's $1,000 a year buy-in. So if you come in third, I think you get 4. If you come 2, and then if you come in second, you get 4, and if you come in first, you get 8, something like that. I don't know what the math is. Maybe it's 2, 5, and 8. So if we get $5,000 to share between us, that would be fun. If we wait another year and we let the fruit stay on the tree a little longer, we'll probably have a longer line of Dynasty victories. But that might not be smart either, because once we're so locked in as the by far, winner, when are these guys going to just, I fold, I'm out of this league. So we were talking about like, where is the balance? Okay, great. That's what we were talking about. But the reality is, because they're poker players and they're in $1,000 a year, nobody wants to play for the future. They're like, I don't want to play for the future. I want to play for now. So the prices on the prospects I'm finding are slightly different because of that. And so it makes us, our lineup is pretty great. It's one catcher league. So Molina at catcher, and it's not great, but it's good with all those prospects coming. We've got Molina catcher, Mountcastle first, Hura second, Keyboom third, Orlando Arcia shortstop. Obviously nothing great here. Corner infield, Choi. Middle infield, Madrigal. And then outfield is good. Acuna, Arozarena, Carlson, Jimenez, Kirilloff, and then 2 util spots in Garcia and Brendan Rodgers. If we move 4 or 5 guys from the top of that list, we could populate the team. And so that was what that was what the conversation was about. And have I given enough, James? What do you think of where we are in our plan? We're still staying open to what happens next, but what do you think based on all that you just heard?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a key point that you made about if you put together too much of a juggernaut with that type of buy-in, you worry about the league's viability. Like, the worst thing that could happen is that the league folds before you guys take home a title, right?
Yeah, it won't fold that soon. It'll fold after our second title. When we win our second title with 140 odd points in a row, and they see that there's nothing that's going to change that, because this is a full-on dynasty. There's no salaries. There's no keeper rules. It's just get everybody, keep everybody. I think we're going to be pretty nasty, and it would be more fun. So we just have to figure, there's a guy, really great guy, who I've gotten to know this year, who wants Torkelson. And he's willing to pay for Torkelson. But do we want Torkelson? You know what I mean? Like, what's the balance there? If we're going to get, oh, screw it, I'll just tell you. Francisco Lindor straight up for Torkelson. Like, what do?
Yeah, I mean, I think you take Lindor.
Yeah, you have to. Not as much fun.
I still love it, Lindor. But that is fascinating. Like, you have a plan, but then how much do you deviate? It's tough because you can't deviate too much, or else you sacrifice that window a little bit. A real quick note before we finish up here. I want to ask you guys a little bit about your draft champions you're doing together. But Auto New Fantasy Baseball is the next level fantasy baseball challenge you've been looking for. Experience a year-round dynasty competition with deep rosters. Accumulate prospects to lead your team in the future or move for a superstar at the trade deadline. Keep your baseball mind engaged in the offseason with trades and arbitration. Learn more about why everyone who plays Auto New becomes addicted at autonewbaseball.com. That's OTTONEU baseball.com. Auto New, better fantasy baseball. Before we do get into your draft champions that you're doing together through about 17 rounds, I hear, any other dynasty topics on your mind? Anything else you want to add to the dynasty conversation?
Yeah, dynasty theory is awesome. It's so much fun. There's so many different angles to play it from. And I really love talking about it. And I love thinking about it and figuring out the best way to make your team the best, whatever it is. It's a really great game. I love it. I really do. I'm not bored of it. I love it. That's it. I just want to say that. I
do love it too. I kind of miss RDI, but we did have an Auto New draft last night, and I'll be scratching that dynasty itch for many years to come. So your guys' draft champions, since RDI did, shut down, you guys wanted to team up, and I love it. You guys, you guys are both smart, and then when you put your minds together, I mean, this could be a juggernaut here. You went with Trey Turner in the first.
I'd pick 7.
Pick 7, okay. I like that. You took him over Trout, did you not?
Yep.
Yeah, that was probably me.
No, I was good with it.
I just think it's kind of imperative to get speed or pitching there. And Trout could run again, but if he doesn't run again,
yeah. The guy I wanted was the argument I had, and it was just we didn't have a chance to discuss it beforehand, so there was nothing to be done. Was the pick us picking at 7? I would have preferred, I think, 4 or 5, especially with what happened in the second round. Knowing it, because I just think Soto and Betts to me are the two guys that I'm targeting at the top of those at 4-5. Because, Acuna's going to go, Tatis is going to go. Sometimes Soto gets grabbed in those top two. But you can't argue Trey Turner, man. I mean, he's if he comes through, he puts us in position not just to win our league, but to compete for the overall, which is, the charm of what we're thinking. We're like, here, perhaps we'll win the overall together. Yes.
Hey, it's possible. We talked to Rob DiPietro, and he beat out, I think, 4,000 plus teams, so it's a long shot, but you wanna aim for that overall if you can.
Clay Link won the overall in TGFBI in 2019. I'm quite sure everyone remembers, and if you don't, please do. And I'm going to be competing against him in AL Labor in about 2 weeks, and so I'm not sure I want to be telling you too much stuff about what I was thinking about in this draft. But here we go.
But yeah, I mean, I beat out like 195 teams, not 4,000 plus like Rob did. But this draft champions overall is winnable if you have the right build, but I think Turner is a great pick because with that in mind, you just keep your options open.
Call. I mean, this is how we do it. One of us has a call, and the other one says, I agree. Nice. It's how James and I tend to do it. So he was really I was like, I kind of feel like Trout here. He's like, no, I think Turner, don't you think? I was like, okay, yeah, no, I see it. Let's go Turner.
You got to have some give when you're sharing a team. You got to.
Always, yeah. Well, we got that. We know how to do that.
You trust each other. That's a big thing.
He's James Anderson.
Yeah, how could you not trust the guy? Yeah. Brandon Woodruff, you followed up with Zach Gallen, and then James and I were talking about your fourth round.
Slow down. Okay. We took Brandon Woodruff, Clay.
I know.
What do you think of that? We took Brandon Woodruff at 24.
Clay was trying to zoom past.
I was trying to.
A bit, so.
James and I are going to be debating Woodruff at First Pitch Florida online soon enough. I'm not going to hate on it. I just think there are probably better options available.
That's as ruthless as Clay will get.
Yep, that's pretty ruthless. Okay, now we can move on. We just had
I get it. I just maybe I have some anti-homerism being up here in Wisconsin, and I kind of hate on the Brewers a little bit.
I think it's you Reds fan, you freaking fans.
I do like Woodruff skills. I just don't know if the workload's going to be there.
You will be. Look, I'm going to be on this show sometime in July talking about the newest rankings that just dropped. And Woodruff's going to be on the IL, and we're going to be sitting here eating our hats. And
he'll be a top 10 guy, one of the two.
Yeah, one of those. And then we took Zach Gallen, which I've never done. And this was, I watched film on him. What a beautiful pitcher, man. I mean, he's really, really good. And then who's after that? Yeah, who's after that?
Gallen, I love. And then we were talking about this pick on the XM show last week because you guys were making calls in between segments and talking it through.
Yeah.
It sounds like you couldn't really settle on a hitter you like. James kind of like Vladdy. Ian kind of liked Aaron Judge at this pick. But since you couldn't really come to terms, you guys both settled on a third straight pitcher, your first relief pitcher, Liam Hendricks. Can you talk us through that decision-making?
You want to do it, James, or should I?
Well, I think in hindsight, it kind of worked out perfectly just because we got Luke Voigt with our next pick. And, closer, like the runs at closer are pretty crazy. And I think Ian and I are both kind of off Josh Hader at his cost right now.
Unquestionably.
I like Chapman, but I mean, this would have been too early, I think, for Chapman. I mean, Hendricks probably has, he could be the number one closer by a healthy margin this year. I mean, he could have one of those types of seasons. So, this kind of freed us up. Those 4 picks, you get the 30-plus steals from Turner, the 2 aces, and the top closer. Then from there, you can still kind of take any type of player you want because you don't have any – I mean, you need power, but I think it just kind of freed us up to kind of go best player available more than we maybe would have been otherwise. And it was also us talking through like which closers we liked and trying to see where there was some overlap because, if we just keep passing on closers because neither of us can agree, then all of a sudden we're stuck taking a guy that we don't really like that much anyway. So I think this was kind of a good way to just get those saves on board.
And also the thing that I've learned through the years is you gotta take your medicine. Maybe this is just my lesson for myself for the day is like you gotta pay the price so you can enjoy later, because the worst feeling in a 50 round draft is realizing that you don't have enough saves. So that then you spend picks 30 through 45 grabbing as many possible save guys as possible, which is just decimates your team in terms of depth. You end up with all these middle relievers or setup guys.
Maybe one or two pans out if you're lucky.
Right, but and you need to do it, and we really are. We're going for the overall here. We want to win our league, but we want to put a statement up on the board. And taking Hendricks there, I'm a big fan of getting a closer that we feel really strong about. I think I was more pushing for Hendricks in that spot. And of all the closers, he's the one that I have the most faith in by far. I like the team. I like that he just signed this big contract. I think he's safe in the job. I think Chapman's safe in the job. I have no guarantee Hader's going to be safe in the job. Diaz. I mean, if you go down the list, who do you trust to close? Like 3 guys, 5 guys, like for the whole thing. So you gotta go get one of those guys if you want to win. I think that's at least my belief, especially because it's different in leagues where there's fab. There's no fab. There's no pickups of guys. There's no looking ahead in the old Tim McLeod way of, I think, well, Ian, I think this guy's going to end up closing in about 3 weeks. You don't get to do that. Not in this game.
Yeah, I like that, too, because you guys, emerged from your first 4 rounds with like a foothold in really every category.
Not power.
But Turner's not a 0 there.
No, not a 0. And then next week, there we go.
Yeah, you addressed that with Luke Voigt. And then Jose Altuve, I imagine, was a Ian lobby special where he kind of talked you into it, James? Not really?
No. Okay. There were maybe a couple of those, but not Altuve. I'm a big believer in him, kind of where he's going. Like, you compare him to like Keston Hiura. I think I'd go Altuve there, and I think it's kind of, he's coming off a down year, obviously, but he's not as old as I think people think he is. And he's just going to help you in a little bit of everything, I think, over a full season.
And also we had a plan for later. There was a guy that I was targeting. There's some power guys I was targeting later for us that came to fruition. So we wanted to balance that out. One of my weaknesses in my game tends to be that I don't look at average enough. So I get to the end of the season, and last year, a lot of second place with a lot of average hurting. So it's something that I gotta improve. I'm good at parts of the game, not as good in other parts of the game. So I just wanted to keep my eye out on that. So that's no, Altuve was not Altuve. I think we pretty much agreed on everybody here coming up. Yeah, because if we didn't agree, we found somebody we agreed on.
Nice. Yeah, I just know that you were kind of the original in this off season, like Altuve believer, and you just pointed out how good the postseason was, and
that's right.
Yeah, this guy was good for a decade, maybe a Hall of Famer. Maybe the cheating scandal dings him a little bit, but the track record of him being good is just so long that you can't.
We were taking him in the second round 2 years ago, in the end of the
second
first.
overall, like 3 years ago. Yeah.
So I like guys like that.
Yeah,
I like guys
running
with bounce back.
Maybe a little questionable, but who knows? He can still run.
He won maybe
Buxton,
8.
Yeah, and Buxton can run a little bit. He didn't do much of that last year, but we know he still has that skill. Maybe James had to be talked into Stanton. Maybe that's the one he had to be talked into. Is that right?
I wouldn't have. This is probably going to be the only team I have Stanton on, but I got the case for it, and I think kind of given the rest of our team, I think it made a lot of sense.
Yeah. What do you think, Ian, of Stanton for redraft? Are you like a huge believer?
Nah, I think he was very well worth the spot right there. He was somebody who that felt the next guy was interesting to me. And Matt Chapman, I've never owned Matt Chapman. We had just missed out. We wanted Chris Bryant, and he got sniped from us. A couple of, and we were deciding between Stanton and Bryant. We're like, we think Bryant will make it. And he didn't. And then Chapman showed up, and I was like, do you like Chapman? And James was like, yeah, I kind of do, right? Isn't that how it went down?
Well, yeah, I've liked Chapman for a long time. I am a little worried about the hip, but it sounds like, it sounds like he's in really good shape right now. And it sounds like he's got a lot to prove. I think the breakout year is... It's either going to come this year or next year for him, where he just has a monster year.
And I had just read an article that said that he was really in great shape and he was really focused on the game, and so I was in on Chappie, and then Gallo, and then Carlson. Dylan Carlson fell pretty significantly there.
Yeah, he fell outside the top 150.
Yeah, he fell outside of almost the top 200, I thought. Didn't he? What pick number was that? I
thought it was more of like 155, 165, something like that.
What is his
round, maybe?
I mean, he's been going around like pick 130, I want to say.
Yeah, no, he was falling, and we considered him with a pick before, and then decided that we didn't want to that we were gonna just wait and we could find that talent somewhere else. And James is really high on Dylan Carlson, so I that was one where I was like, all right, let's go along. I'm along for the ride.
Yeah, the adjustments he made seemed to really pay off there. He was batting cleanup for that team by the end. So,
and then we got to. But when he fell, I was like, all right, let's do it. And then after that, we went to Richard Rodriguez, which was we were both watching film of him at the same time. And we're sort of like, he's really only 92, 93. Like, he's not going much harder than that. But at that point in the draft, to get that second closer that we really did feel like was going to have the job, it just seemed too good to pass up. And we thought that was the end of that tier. And then you want to tell the next one?
Sure, yeah. Chris Bassett. Sorry, James.
Yeah. No, I mean, our next. I mean, the exciting picks are kind of over for the most part. But
James Candelario, come on.
Well, yeah. Ian and I did really want Candelario because he's our corner infielder and he's eligible at first and third, which is just a really nice element of flexibility there.
Yeah, I mean,
especially in a DC.
And that's what I was going to say, that his value goes up in that format for me. And I like him anyway, but his value went up there. And then Pineda, which is how I know. I might be calling my man James about Michael Pineda. And then Pineda, and then Gavin Lux, and then into Manny Margot. And the reason we took Manny Margot, really, at the end of the day, is because in the original RDI draft, we drafted Manny Margot. And so anytime we can it's like, getting back our boys. So
getting the band back together.
Yeah, get the band back together.
I think Margot's going to play quite a bit and steal quite a few bags. So I don't hate that at all. No, the Gallo pick, I just can't take Gallo myself, but I imagine that was kind of one to address that power deficiency early on in the draft.
Right. Yeah. So Gallo's not a huge target for anybody. But at the same time, at that point, with what we needed, it made some sense.
And Richard Rodriguez, I can't hate on that pick, but I do wonder, that Pirates team's just tearing everything down when he might go. We'll see. But great stuff. Ian, we got to wrap things up here. I know you are kind with your time, and I don't want to keep you too long, but anything else you want to mention that you got going on before we let you go?
I'm lucky enough every week, even though I do this show like once a month or once every 6 weeks. Every week I do my podcast with Derek Van Riper and Nando DeFino, Under the Radar, on the Athletic Fantasy Baseball Podcast. We come out Tuesdays, and now I am a writer over at The Athletic where I do my Dynasty rankings. And I just got to say one last time, the draft kit dropped today at The Athletic. If you're not a subscriber, you should be a subscriber to The Athletic. You should be a subscriber to RotoWire. I've been saying that for years. I've meant it for years. I say it now. I mean it now. You get to read James Anderson. You get to read Clay Link. You get to read Jeff Erickson, Todd Zola, Jason Collette, some of the best in the game. So my tip of the cap to you guys, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Ian, and thanks for all the hard work you put in at RotoWire, and congrats again on your new role at The Athletic. Read his 2021 Fantasy Baseball Dynasty League rankings as part of The Athletic's draft kit, which just launched. Anything else you want to mention, James?
Dropped the 178 prospects you need to know in the AL East article earlier this week. The AL Central version of that goes up tomorrow, and I'll be doing 2 of those for the next few weeks here. Also have some betting content on the way. I'll be doing some over/under win totals picks. So just be on the lookout for that stuff.
Dude, awesome, yeah. You're the man. You're the man, James. Come on now.
We're ramping up our betting content, and James has had some good hits in the recent years. I remember one guy coming up to us, maybe it was just me, but he said a couple of years ago, first pitch, that we made him money on a raise over, James. So I'm looking forward to reading your betting content that's coming to the site. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate your time. And James and I will be back on Friday on SiriusXM for Farm Friday. Hope you'll join us. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.
Please like our video and subscribe to RotoWire. Then go to rotowire.com/pod for a free 10-day trial.